morning. I'm Linda Craig, President of the League of Women Voters of the Bay Area, and welcome to our 2016 Bay Area League Convention. Part of what I have given you in the handout here is the really detailed. I'm not going to go into dates and things like that, but give you a sense of when the league was formed, the Bay Area League, in 1961. There was an air district and there was a water quality district. And then since then, there were other agencies formed over time. And right now we have several, well, right now we consider 4 major regional agencies, but then you count the water, so 5 is usually what we think about. And for a lot of these years, there have been many, many attempts to merge these agencies, to consolidate them, to make them directly elected, either in full or in part, or to achieve funding for them, or to achieve more powers. And of course, there's always been this tension between what the regional agency has authority to do and what the locals feel is their God-given right or their legitimate purpose. And so there's always this tension between the cities and the counties who have land use control and a regional agency that might interfere with that in some way. So in 1975, the bill that we worked on was authored by Assemblyman John Knox of Richmond, and it was AB 625, and Jerry Stewart of the Palo Alto League and I and other members of the board went up to Sacramento. Occasionally, we were working on the bill until it went through past both houses, went to a conference committee, got out of the conference committee. We typed madly typed letters and got them in the mail by midnight that night, and the bill failed by 2 votes. So, and this was like the 5th in a row bill that had been proposed for regional governance for the Bay Area. And then after that, the next bill that came up proposed that there would be a directly elected regional mayor, which you can imagine that one over. And I think at the time, there was even some thought, I can't remember, I know that the Speaker of the House, at the time, or the Speaker of the Assembly, Neil McCarthy, was involved in this measure as well. So anyway, proposing a directly elected mayor for the Bay Area sort of killed the whole idea for several years. So from that point, though, on, periodically the league has been involved as issues have come up. There tends to need to be a coalition of interested organizations who come together and they work as a group, and then they propose legislation, and then it goes to the legislature and it seems to pass the Assembly, but the Senate doesn't seem to quite get there. And particularly as issues relate to local control in some of the rural counties, you have to get their votes at some point to get it through. So in any event, the next major effort that happened was in 1989, 1990 was an effort called Bay Vision 2020. And I don't know, Jean, if you're here, if you wish to come up and speak. Jean Matsura was former president of the Bay Area League, by 1998 to 2000, in that range. And she's here with us back. But the Bay Vision 2020 was a large coalition of, I would say, academics and also what we call NGOs, non-governmental organizations in the Bay Area, the Bay Area Council. A commission was formed, headed by the Chancellor of UC Berkeley, by Michael Heyman, who was Chancellor at the time. The League was very, very involved with that, and there was legislation that we got involved in. But the reason that one failed is it didn't really include the elected officials in the process. And so, well, part of it is you So anyway, that then subsequently other bills kind of floated around, and then finally the last attempt was in 2002, and so finally the legislature agreed to create what they called a joint policy committee, which was a higher level of people from each of the 4 regional agencies. Actually, it began from ABAG, NTC, and the Air Quality District. Now, I hope all of you know what I'm saying. I'm using shorthand here, but the names of these agencies. There's an Air District, there's a Transportation Commission, there's the Association of Area Governments, which is a coalition or a joint powers authority of the cities and counties in the Bay Area. And then there's the Bay Conservation Development Commission, known as BCDC. And then there's the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Each of them has a different structure, but in theory they all address some of the same issues, and actually now that we're getting more concerned about climate change, they do have similar issues in common. So in any event, after 2002, they kind of gave up on legislation, frankly, and so they formed this super committee that was to coordinate. And what that really meant was that people from each agency would come together, and I think there were like 5, I don't remember the number exactly, but 5 from each agency that got together every month or every 2 months to coordinate what they were doing. But what it did was really add another layer of coordination, rather than, this was not a super decision-making group, it was more have people talk to each other and make sure they knew what one another was doing. So anyway, that committee was formed in 2004. And it still exists today, but it has a slightly different name. It's now known as the Bay Area Regional Collaborative. And they have added members from BCDC now, so there are 4 groups, and they've reduced the number of members from each of the 4 agencies. So then next comes the approval of SB 375. This was a bill approved by authored by Senator Steinberg, that required that there be sustainable communities strategy plans adopted in the 18 regions within the state. And so while these other agencies were doing like a regional transportation plan or a regional land use plan or something that had a Bay obviously had a plan, I don't know how often it got updated, but these others had regular plans that they were doing. This required that the transportation, the housing, the land use, and open space all be consolidated into a single plan. And so that process we went through, we were very, very involved. The league was very involved with that. And basically what it was doing was trying to move what had been in the regional plans, both coordinated between the agencies, but also a more unified vision for the Bay Area. So that plan was adopted in 2013. Did any of you participate in any of the hearings or go to any of the meetings? Yes, well, some of us did. Well, you probably are glad you didn't go. Unfortunately, what happened during that process, which actually was run very well from the staff standpoint, from ABAG, MTC, they were the primary agencies working on this, was that there are certain interests in the Bay Area that really oppose regional government in general. And they really mobilized their troops by, with busloads of people coming out to the hearings, and where it was very hard to conduct a hearing with, hundreds of people. And so even though the plan was adopted, the process is being revisited as to the next mode. And so they are having workshops and things, and the next round is moving forward right now. So what I also wanted to say, and I put these slides up here, but I don't know if I really need to go through them. What I wanted to share with you is that in 1998 to 2000, the Bay Area League had a study, which was to review our current positions on regional governance and regional planning. And so in your packet, at the back of the packet, there are the existing league positions. Okay, you go to that. And you go to the one that says regional governance, and that tells you what our current position is, which is
Page 13.
Okay, thank you.
12, page 12.
Well, it says regional, it's either 12 or 13. Take it as my official copy says page 13. But basically what it says that we support a multi-purpose regional planning agency for the 9 Bay areas. We support actions to consolidate existing regional agencies. We support measures to make the bodies representative of the population distribution, as well as environmental, social equity, and economic interests. So, in any event, these are the kind of things that when a proposal comes up, we look at this and we decide when the league wants to come down on the proposal. We do want authority, for example, to actually do something at the regional level right now. But basically what happens, there are agencies that have regulatory authority like the Air District and like the Bay Conservation Development Commission. The other agencies primarily do planning or they do funding. So that's where the influence comes, is through the development of a plan and then also the ability to grant funding for projects that move forward. So we also want some sort of mandatory compliance with the regional plan. Well, that's not going anywhere at the moment. But these were ideas that came from our study of other regional governments in the Bay Area, around the country. For example, among the agencies that we studied were Portland Metropolitan Area, which has a directly elected group. We also studied the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which had a similar structure like that. But again, it helps if you have a central city that the world is focused on, whereas in the Bay Area we are so much torn between having 3 centers of population, being San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland. And so we don't have the central city focus. So anyway, the bottom line is that when the Metropolitan Transportation Commission was formed by legislation in the 1970s, they became the agency in the Bay Area that became the Metropolitan Planning Organization, when they received the primary grants for planning in the Bay Area rather than the Association of Bay Area Governments. This is a very technical issue. But over time, MTC gets the money and they share it with ABAG for the projects that ABAG is doing. And ABAG also gets money from their members. It's a member-based organization. And then all of these agencies get grants of one variety or the other. So what our concern right now from the league is that last year, after they approved the Sustainable Community Strategy Plan, known as Plan Bay Area, there were some emerging disagreements between ABAG and MTC, particularly at the staff level. And so MTC decided to provide only 6 months of funding instead of the full year to ABAG. and said, well, we think our planning staffs from both agencies should merge, and we won't give you any money. And so there was a huge outcry last summer. I mean, that's not the way to go about a merger. Some have called it a hostile takeover. And that is the sort of phrase that's used more frequently than not. So anyway, there was a huge outcry, and the league objected to this method of moving forward with consolidation, even though we believe that merging two agencies is a good idea. So they find MTC and ABAG agreed that they would hire a consultant and to study ways of moving forward and options for merging, ranging from moving staff to doing nothing to creating a whole new agency to there were seven. So anyway, they agreed to hire a consultant, and the consultant is just about finished with their work that's due to end on June 1st. And so among the handouts that I gave you was a diagram of ABAG and NTC, and I think I had one for talking about the process. So basically this has been going on since the beginning of this year. And so what I wanted you to be aware of is what is happening on this merger study. That at this point, the consultant has recommended that the entire planning, well, actually the entire staff at ABAG, the regular staff, be merged with the NGC staff, as of the beginning of fiscal year, which will be beginning of July. And then MTC and ABAG will have an agreement to pursue some governance model that could very well change the structure of MTC or ABAG, or maybe ABAG would be an advisory group to MTC. So it's a very complicated thing, but I wanted to make sure that you understand exactly what the league is doing when we send you information out to your local leagues by way of your voters. So anyway, I'm taking more time than I should, but in any event, I wanted to at least give you this background as to where we are on the status of regional governance in the Bay Area. There is information on the website, and I don't have it right here with me, but I think it's www.mtcabagmergerstudy.com, and so if you need more information or would like more information on this, otherwise we'll be letting you know what's happening